Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Off the Top. I am Nate. Alongside me is my buddy, my partner in crime. We got Shadow down here. Why don't you introduce yourself, Will?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Shadow, Nate, always a pleasure. I am the Will Gray.
Tell us a little about yourself, Will.
I am the host and lead writer of Botch Spots and Chair Shots. I've also been a dirt sheet writer for the last 2 years, writing for some publications online like Last Word on Sports, Pro Wrestling Stories, The Sportster, The Riches, including my own blog. I interview wrestlers. I cover indie wrestling. That's my main niche. I cover indie wrestling all over the country, specifically here in the Southeast. Primarily is my main goal. We do a lot of work in Atlanta and Memphis and around this area.
Very nice, very nice. Definitely sounds like a lot of fun. You're a very busy guy from what it sounds like. But tonight we are hopping back into the career retrospectives, and tonight we're going to focus on a superstar who has been requested so many times, and we just haven't been able to find the right time to tackle this because of other superstars that we wanted to take care of who are active. Tonight we're going to focus on WWE Hall of Famer, the late, great Eddie Guerrero. So really, when it comes down to Eddie Guerrero, that's a name, you hear it, you know exactly who he is. You see his face, you know everything that he's accomplished, everything that he was able to do in his very short time with us. He's actually one of the very few guys who was out there who was actually trained by his own father. He was trained mostly by Eddie Guerrero, who was also a legendary wrestler. In fact, Eddie Guerrero ran indie promotions, and he would actually allow Eddie and his nephew Chavo, who were close in age, to wrestle each other during intermission at their shows, which I didn't know that until I read that today. That's one of my favorite things to do when I do these is learn things that I didn't know before. That's one of them. I think that's really cool. He got his start with that promotion with his dad, but he also debuted in WCW as a jobber in 1989 against Terry Funk. His first match on TV or in WCW was against Terry Funk. And we got our guy Jamie in the background showing us all these great pictures. Thank you for that, Jamie. Jamie will be joining us a little bit later here. After his short little WCW stint, he did go off to AAA in Mexico, which is arguably the biggest wrestling promotion in the entire country of Mexico. And our guy Will here has actually got a little bit of information regarding that stop that he had in AAA. Will?
So the key element to remember here is everybody remembers the Monday Night Wars, right? WWE, WCW. In Mexico, their WWE for the longest time was actually a company that was CMLL, Consuela Mexicano Lucha Libre, or whatever it is. But for the longest time, it was EMLL first, then it transitioned to being CMLL. When it became CMLL, they ran the country from north to south. It was the dominant promotion. Along the lines of 1991 to 1992, the top promoter and booker in CMLL, his name was Antonio Pena. Him and K-Dog and Eddie, a young Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, they leave and go to Mexico City, and that's where AAA came from. So before 1992, it was only CMLL or the WWE of Mexico. In 1992, it became AAA and CMLL. So it was like WCW entered the picture in 1992. And that's when that luchador invasion started. So when they went back to Mexico, they helped form AAA. And then when Eddie came back to the States again, that's when he brought your Rays and your Psychoses and all of the guys that came up in that 1994 WCW push. So that was kind of that. It's really important to also remember that he had a tag team partner whose name was Art Barr. Art was a key influence in Eddie's style because Eddie doesn't have the traditional Lucha Libre style because he never adorned a mask. And he wrestles more like a middleweight, meaning he does a lot of like grappling and stuff stylistically early in his career versus the high flying stuff. Because in Mexico, Eddie didn't fly like a normal Lucha Libre. He was bigger than some of these guys. So he was fighting more like a middleweight. So he think more Dean Malenko and less Rey Mysterio here. And then that transition allowed him to come into the States. Art Barr unfortunately passed And that's when Eddie adopted the frog splash, was when he came back into the States after 92 and the passing of Art Barr. And then Eddie adopted the frog splash and then jumped back into New Japan and stuff. So there's my 2 cents, my little bit of homework for the night.
Hell yeah, it's great. I love that.
And I'm gonna throw this out there too. I had never heard that until just now either. Like, I knew CMLL, I knew about that, I knew about the whole kind of war that they had with AAA essentially. But I didn't know all those details about Eddie and Art Barr. So thank you for that. Actually, that was really my favorite part about this is learning these things.
Tell them something I never even knew about, and I followed Eddie for a long time, and that's crazy.
It's a really obscure fact. Like, a lot of people don't realize the split of CMLL and AAA, because you have to like go back to the early 90s. And that's one of those like lost arts. It's kind of like jazz music. You know what I mean? Like, people know it exists, but nobody really studies jazz anymore. Wrestling in the 70s and 80s, even starting to be that early 90s, people know it exists, but nobody really goes back and studies it. You know, like, it's starting to be Attitude Era and beyond. So to go all the way back to 1990, 91, 92, a lot of people don't even realize like what was happening in New Japan or Mexico at that point, because wrestling was only just taking off again in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a big thing. For some reason, there's like this big blackout in people's like knowledge of wrestling in between like Bruno Sammartino and Buddy Rogers and Pedro Morales, those guys in the the late 60s and 70s. For some reason, in the 80s, you think Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, and then there's just this blackout from the late 80s to the mid 90s when WCW decided to rise up. You got your Undertaker debut in the early 90s. You got your Bret Hart rise to stardom when there really wasn't a whole lot of star power in WWE. But all these other smaller promotions, New Japan, AAA, they were making a name for themselves. And New Japan is arguably probably the third largest wrestling promotion on the planet right now.
Easily gets that vote for me.
Like, we know Ring of Honor folded and is now part of AEW. AAA, I love AAA, but it's not what it used to be. I don't know. It's just those companies were making a huge name for themselves, and a lot of the guys that wrestled for those companies made it to the bigs. They made it to WCW and WWE. In this, you mentioned it a little bit, but I'll touch on it too. Eddie Guerrero actually went to New Japan for a little while also in the early 90s. He kind of was building up his own credibility so that he could eventually make the jump. He made the jump to ECW. Paul Heyman lured him away from those smaller companies and gave him a championship match in his debut against Too Cold Scorpio, and he won. Eddie Guerrero's very first ECW match was a ECW World TV Championship match against Too Cold, and he won. I think that's a huge endorsement from Heyman to a guy like Eddie Guerrero, who was still very young in his career. He was in his early 20s still. He very quickly got pulled away from ECW to WCW. Eric Bischoff kind of lured him over, and he came into WCW with Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit in 94, 95 that time. And he very quickly got into feuds with people like Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen and Diamond Dallas Page and Chris Jericho in his first year with WCW. And then he ended up shifting over to the cruiserweight division, which WCW, you can say what you want about WCW. There were some great moments and terrible moments. There was some good business and bad business. WCW put cruiserweights on the map in the United States. And it was guys like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Jericho, Malenko, and Ultimo Dragon. And some of the greatest in-ring performances in the history of that company involved those guys, for years. He ended up getting into a feud with Chavo Guerrero, which I remember this feud when I watched an old documentary on Eddie Guerrero, but I researched a lot more into it recently. And Chavo Guerrero was going completely insane in this feud, kayfabe. But
this is the Pepe storyline, man. When he brought out the horse,
but yeah, it's just bizarre behavior from Chavo Guerrero, and it was Eddie beat him in a match and made him his slave or something like that. I don't know, man. Late 90s wrestling was something else. It was out there.
The Chavo storyline he was upset because Eddie was the quintessential heel and he was trying to convince Chavo to be a bad guy. And
Right.
so that was the whole thing, was him playing mind games, like convincing you got to be bad, lie, cheat, steal. And Chavo's like, no, I want to be a good guy. And it's that struggle. And Chavo eventually loses his mind and goes like El Bandito style, like
Yep.
Gaucho's cowboy. And he's running around with like a stick pony and everything. It's ridiculous. The man loses his mind.
Oh yeah. I mean I need to watch more video on it. I've only seen a little bit. But just reading about it kind of blew my mind. And I'm like, I never envisioned Chavo doing stuff like that. And it's just I need to watch more of it. Perhaps the most
I'll be honest, if I can. I'll be honest. I didn't pay much close attention to Eddie in WCW days, so I'm actually learning a whole bunch right here. So I
Right.
appreciate this.
So the most important feud that he had in WCW was actually a real life personal feud with Eric Bischoff. Eddie Guerrero stood up for the Latino wrestlers in the company because he didn't think that Eric Bischoff wanted to push them. He didn't want them at the forefront. He knew that the guys that were in there in the back, Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio, all those Latino wrestlers that WCW had, they were just sitting there, not getting pushed to their full potential. And Eddie took a lot of problem with that. He actually, it's very gray when I researched this more, because I thought it was a shoot, but apparently Eric Bischoff has gone back and said that it was a work shoot. Eric Bischoff has said it was a work, and Eric Bischoff can't get it straight. So from what it seems to me is this promo that Eddie Guerrero cut on WCW about Latino wrestlers being disrespected and about how much he dislikes Eric Bischoff, I very much think that was a real promo. I feel like that was Eddie Guerrero speaking his mind. And it was one of the first big pipe bombs in professional wrestling that blurred the lines of reality and storyline. And because of this, these real life issues that Eddie had with Eric Bischoff and the company not pushing these Latino wrestlers, Eddie formed a stable of Latino wrestlers that we now know as Latino World Order. And throughout the entire LWO storyline, nearly every single Latino wrestler that was under contract with WCW became a part of LWO for some period of time. LWO was only around for a few months, but they made such a huge, massive impact that we're bringing them back now with modern day Latino wrestlers. And the LWO shirt has been on WWE's shop for the last 20 years. Like, they made that much of an impact by standing up for not just themselves, but the Latino community as a whole. It was a huge, huge movement that helped Latino wrestlers gain more respect in the United States under guys like Eric Bischoff. Excuse me. Vince Russo ends up getting fired from WCW, and for some reason, Eddie didn't like that. I think Eddie liked Vince Russo a lot more than most of us do. But when Kevin Sullivan, either that or he had some beef with Kevin Sullivan, which I believe that might be true because
both are very viable options here in this situation.
So Kevin Sullivan comes on and takes Vince Russo's place in WCW. Eddie immediately asks for his release, and WCW is like, all right, you can go. January 19th, 2000, Eddie Guerrero gets his release from WCW. Less than 2 weeks later, he shows up in the WWF alongside Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn in a group known as the Radicals on Monday Night Raw.
That was really that long ago, huh? Holy shit.
Yeah.
23 years ago.
3 years ago.
That's insane.
Eddie was featured in storylines with DX immediately, the Hardys, and he even became an Intercontinental Champion by accidentally pinning his love interest, Chyna. And then this was when he began
fantastic story.
Oh, I know.
That's the original mommy story.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where that whole thing came from, was Eddie and Chyna, and she had just won the title from Jeff Jarrett in the Good Housekeeping match. And then her and Eddie became love interests, and there was the trade-off because it was like she had it, then he had it, then she had it, then Jericho had it, then her and Jericho held it together.
Yep.
It was such a mess. The IC title was all over the place at this point.
Right. But the one match that I remember, I want to believe that it was a triple threat match. It was supposed to be Chyna versus Jericho, I think. And Eddie was like, I don't want China to get hurt, so put me in this match. They put Eddie Guerrero in this match, and Eddie Guerrero accidentally pinned China to win it. And this match with China and Jericho is the reason the whole lie, cheat, and steal thing became a thing. Because after this match, to keep his championship, Eddie Guerrero started cheating in all of his title matches. He would lie, he would cheat, he would steal, he would pull you just hit me with a chair, but the ref didn't see it, get DQ'd, things like that. That was where that came from. The biggest problem that came from this, late 1999, before he left WCW, he got into a car accident. That was kind of the reason the LWO storyline fizzled out, because Eddie Guerrero was the leader of the LWO. But during the time that he was recovering, he became addicted to pain pills. This is where we kind of get serious about this, because this is a very real thing that happened.
We should warn the audience at home, this could be triggering for your addictions and such. So we do not recommend we're not condoning any of this. And if you feel the need that you are addicted in any sense, please reach out to anybody to get the help you need. And that's our trigger for this. Please enjoy the rest of the show.
Right. He was constantly in pain, and he was constantly just, trying to numb it, trying to make it better. WWE knew about this, and in 2001, WWE, being the company that it is, they do pay for their wrestlers to go to rehab. They sent Eddie Guerrero to rehab, paid for it. And then they kayfabe injured him in a match with, I think it was Albert, also known as A-Train, right? Or
Prince Albert. Yeah. Then he became A-Train, and he was also yeah, there you go.
And then Sweet Tea.
He's also he was a trainer for a long time with WWE, a coach.
I think he still is, isn't he?
He's still a trainer in NXT. He's Matt Bloom.
Matt Bloom. Yeah, there's his real name. Yes, sir.
And he was off TV for the entire year, and then he ended up getting arrested for drunk driving, and then WWE just cut ties. They released him. He decided to go straight to the Indies, and he was actually part of Ring of Honor's debut show. The very first show that Ring of Honor put on, Eddie Guerrero was a part of it. He wrestled with Juventud Guerrera. He wrestled with CM Punk back when CM Punk was just getting his start.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that he wrestled CM Punk either.
Right. He actually ended up getting clean, as far as WWE knew. Eddie got clean. They hired him back in April. He came back, immediately started a feud with Rob Van Dam, and then won the Intercontinental title from Rob Van Dam very quickly. He did have a very brief partnership with Chris Benoit. Eddie then began teaming with his nephew Chavo, who was now in WWE, and they became known as Los Guerreros. Excuse me. Probably the most famous thing about these two, other than their in-ring work, which was pretty much second to none, was their slogan. Their slogan was, "We lie, we cheat, and we steal, but at least we're honest about it." And I, as a little kid, watching these two on TV when I'm 6, 7 years old, they were so funny. They were so funny, but yet at the same time,
you just made me feel real old, Nate.
Right? Me too.
Like me too, real fucking old, dude. Matt said he's 23. We were talking about things that happened 23 years ago. Matt's like, I'm only 23. I was like, fuck, I got my license 20 years ago.
Well, hang on. You see, when Eddie Guerrero came to WWE, Matt's parents decided it was time to celebrate. So he's here.
He made it, guys. Eddie made it.
And so this is where Eddie started making iconic moment after iconic moment after iconic moment in the next 4 years that he was around. He was a multiple-time U.S. champion. He got into feuds with guys like John Cena. He was a tag team champion with Chavo a couple of times. Chris Benoit wins the Royal Rumble in 2004, challenges Triple H at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship.
Whoa.
Later on, Eddie Guerrero. Yeah.
You forgot about him and Rey Mysterio tag team championships and challenging one another for the first time in WWE WrestleMania history versus tag champ.
I haven't gotten there yet.
I just thought, because you were naming off titles, I just thought I'd bring that in.
Later
Not bad.
That's later on. Okay. Okay. So Chris Benoit goes off to Raw, challenges Triple H. It ends up being a triple threat with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. Eddie, meanwhile, wins a number one contender 15-man Royal Rumble style match to become number one contender to Brock Lesnar's WWE Championship. Now, that match happened at No Way Out. Brock Lesnar was on his way out the door. They needed to get the title off of him. Eddie Guerrero was the guy to do it. Vince was fully behind him at this point. He was completely over with the crowd as this babyface. Going into a match with a guy like Brock Lesnar, looking back, it seems like the only guy that could have realistically done it was a guy who lies and cheats and steals to win his matches. No one else was touching Brock Lesnar back then.
Does anybody still touch Brock now? But anyhow,
not really. Honestly, no. Even Cody, when Cody beat him, he beat him with a fluky roll up. Like,
right.
Anyways, in one of the most iconic moments in WWE history, Eddie Guerrero lied, cheated, and stole his way to defeating Brock Lesnar by smacking him in the head with the WWE Championship and landing a frog splash on him while the ref was down. And I believe the belt was below Brock Lesnar's back, too. So, it was kind of like got hit twice with it, essentially. Eddie Guerrero wins the WWE Championship to a lot of people's surprise, myself included, because back when I was, that young, sorry, Will, I didn't know the whole story with Brock and Goldberg. I didn't really know a whole lot. I didn't have access to the internet that much. So Eddie beating Brock Lesnar like that, one of the biggest, most iconic title victories in the history of professional wrestling. And I don't think anyone would disagree with me on that. All right?
No.
So, weeks later, WrestleMania 20. Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero put on a great match. Eddie Guerrero retains his title. Later in the night, real-life best friend Chris Benoit defeats Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the main event to win the World Heavyweight Championship in one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever and one of the greatest triple threat matches ever. The most iconic moment, we all know it, the end of the show, confetti is pouring down from the ceiling, and the two men are in these two real-life best friends who no one thought would succeed in this company because of their size, because of where they came from, things like that. Everyone wrote them off as just in-ring guys who were there to have good matches and nothing else. That's what they were wrote off as. Yes, Shadow.
So I know we'll probably talk about this later on when we talk about the promos and etc. But you can't talk about the Eddie Brock feud without bringing up arguably one of the most, to this day, emotional promos you'll ever watch between him and Brock. Because it was real. It was
promo.
Eddie blurred that line between reality and entertainment with that promo.
You can say he blurred the line. I think he took a sledgehammer to the fourth wall and knocked it right down and was like, this is it. This is Eddie Guerrero. This is, he lost it. He legitimately lost his wife and kids for a brief period of time. Like he went through it.
And during that time, he also had an illegitimate child outside of his marriage.
We'll get to that.
I'm pumped. Leave me alone.
Eddie Guerrero later lost his WWE Championship to John Bradshaw friggin' Layfield. Excuse me. And then continued to feud with Kurt Angle after that. JBL went on this monster heel run. Eddie Guerrero still tried to fight his way back into title contention. He wanted to win the Royal Rumble in 2005. I don't know if y'all remember this, but he tried to switch Royal Rumble numbers with Ric Flair. I think it was with Ric Flair.
It was, yeah.
And he got into it, they caught him, and then he had to switch him back, and he ended up being number one. So Eddie went in first in the Royal Rumble and went half an hour. Didn't win, unfortunately. But shortly after the whole Royal Rumble, he started teaming with Rey Mysterio again, won a tag team championship with him. And instead of defending the titles at WrestleMania 21, Chavo Guerrero actually talked them into having a one-on-one match against each other to tear the house down. And WrestleMania 21, top to bottom, is one of the best WrestleMania cards that have ever. It's top 5 for sure. This match is often overlooked because of, Eddie and Shawn, Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, and because of, I think Kurt and Brock was that. No, Kurt and Brock was not that one, was it?
No, Kurt and Brock was 19.
WrestleMania 21, John Cena, JBL. That was a big one. Batista
Triple H. Yeah.
Those 3 matches often overshadow Eddie and Ray, but Eddie and Ray put on an absolute banger like they did every single time they got in the ring together. Mysterio won the match, and Eddie Guerrero did not like that.
I think that's the first time Ray beat Eddie, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So throughout the next few weeks, there was a lot of tension growing between the two of them. They lost their tag title match against, I want to say it was Eminem. I think it was
the
Joey
Basham Brothers.
Was it the Basham Brothers?
It was one of those 2 tag teams, but it was something stupid.
If somebody can confirm that for me, I don't remember who it was exactly, but I know that they lost because of the whole, growing tension with them. And then when they had a rematch, was it Eminem? Thank you, Haley. I know they had a match with the Basham Brothers. I remember that. That was right around that time. Eddie eventually abandoned Ray in their rematch, leaving Ray to lose. So they didn't get the tag titles back, and that kickstarted this whole feud with Eddie and Ray. That would prove to be Eddie's last big feud in WWE. His last big, and I honestly don't know if he would have wanted to feud with anybody else, maybe Chavo. But that feud started, and boy, was it absolute sports entertainment at its finest. Eddie revealed in this feud that Rey Mysterio's son Dominic was not biologically Rey's son, and he was in fact Eddie's biological son. And he played this off by saying that he had a child out of wedlock while he was recovering and having his own marital troubles at home. And he allowed Ray to adopt this son because Ray and his wife were supposedly having trouble conceiving. Obviously, we know that this is bogus. This is, it's a wrestling storyline. But that was like one of the most WWE storylines ever. And on the surface, if you look at that storyline, it's utterly ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous.
It's garbage. I mean, in retrospect, it's garbage. But who else can pull it off rather than those 2 men?
The 2 men who are in this feud together are so unbelievably talented that they made this the most entertaining feud of the entire year that year. Like, hands down, Eddie versus Ray was the number 1 feud in 2005. Better than Hogan and Michaels. I will say that. Better than Hogan and Michaels. So, in yet another iconic WWE moment in time, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero fought in a custody of Dominic ladder match at SummerSlam in 2005, in which the winner would retain legal custody over Dominic. Great match, absolutely bonkers. Vicky Guerrero missing her spot and Eddie Guerrero cursing on national TV. That was one of the things about it. He was legitimately mad about that. Ray would ultimately win the match and then custody of his son. And then they actually had a blow-off match after that a lot of people forget about. Yeah, where that was Vicky. That's right, Trey. A lot of people forget about the later match they had. They had a steel cage match on SmackDown that was equally as fantastic, and Eddie Guerrero ended up winning that one. But it wasn't for custody of Dominic. Eddie then had a very brief feud with Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship. He was unsuccessful in winning. He turned babyface again by coming out in his lowrider with Batista to his old music, his Viva La Raza music. Became a babyface again, luckily, right at the end there, because his last televised match ended up being in November of that year against Mr. Kennedy on an episode of SmackDown. Eddie was victorious in that match the same way he was victorious in so many other matches before. Disqualification via lying, cheating, and stealing. Ex-con Dom. Let's go. And this is where it's gonna be rough. 2 days after that, it was just 2 days. Chavo Guerrero finds Eddie Guerrero in his hotel room, unconscious. Eddie was pronounced dead upon the ambulance arriving at the scene. And then this, to me, was where everything this is where wrestling became very real to me. I was 10 years old, and, growing up, everyone's tells you wrestling's fake, wrestling's fake. when Monday Night Raw opens with Vince McMahon saying all storylines are being put on hold, we need to honor this man who left an untouchable impact on professional wrestling across the world. 10 years old, I'm sitting on my couch. I am bawling my eyes out because this is a guy I grew up watching. This is a guy that put on great match after great match. He was one of the best baby faces you'll ever see and one of the most despicable heels you'll ever see. Eddie Guerrero, he was something else. The next two episodes, the next episode of Raw, the next episode of SmackDown, were both tribute shows to Eddie Guerrero. All the matches were just there for pure entertainment. They were not to be advancing any feuds. We got to see Shawn Michaels versus Rey Mysterio in a fantastic match. John Cena against, can someone help me out? Who did John Cena face in that? I don't remember who it was.
I don't remember.
I want to say it might have been Randy Orton. But yeah, Batista. The Batista tribute when he was on video, that one was rough too. And then everyone remembers the iconic one at the beginning. His best friend Chris Benoit at the front of the roster, just showing his vulnerable side to the entire world.
So if I can cut in for a sec. See,
of course.
Eddie passed in November of 2005, and that hit me hard because at that time he was super one of my favorites all time. You know, he still is. And then 2 months almost to the day, because Eddie passed November 15th, correct? If I'm
November 14th.
November 14th. So 2 months minus 10 days, I lost my dad afterwards. Mm-hmm. So like I lost Eddie, who was something that I was watching and learning to love and appreciate, and then to turn around and have a loss personal to me, which is my father. There was just so much happening, and I was like 15 years old, and I was like, man, it hit hard, right? Because you grow up idolizing this man named Eddie Guerrero, and you idolize your father typically, depending your circumstance, of course. And that just hit hard, and I felt like I lost two dads in a matter of, a short period of time.
It was terrible. And the thing with Eddie Guerrero, he was in the prime of his career. Like, he was 37 years old. That's, by today's standards, that's pretty young in pro wrestling. There's so many guys that are over 40 in the ring putting on fantastic matches. And Eddie Guerrero, we know that there was so much that he could have still done. There's a big debate. Some people said this is true, and some people have said that this was not true. That Eddie was supposed to actually defeat Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship because Batista was injured. We do know that Batista was injured around that time, and he did end up losing the World Heavyweight Championship.
So Ray said something in the comments there. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. He says, imagine the matches if he's still alive, HBK, Eddie versus Undertaker. So for what it's worth, the WrestleMania that was coming up of that March or April, it was actually supposed to be HBK versus Eddie. They were getting ready to gear up the storyline for it in December.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly, and I remember reading this in one of I have both of Shawn Michaels' books. In one of them, he actually talks about that. He said that's exactly why he asked to face Rey Mysterio right after Eddie passed, because he never got to work with Rey either. Not very much, anyways. Not enough that you would, consider it significant. And he thought that was the best way that he could pay a tribute to Eddie, was to wrestle one of his closest friends. Eddie Guerrero, yes, it's very, very young. He was one of the best on the planet to ever do this. And that's where we get into the part of the show where we kind of, maybe, I don't know. I try not to be biased about these things, but when I go back and look, I'm trying to think, maybe I'm being biased because he passed. No, I'm really not. He was really that damn good. So, this is where we get into the part of the show where everyone is available. Everyone can talk about what you think. Jamie, if you're ready, you can pop in here too.
I'm gonna personally invite Miss Haley because she's been patiently waiting with us to deliver the show.
If Haley wants to join, she is more than welcome to.
So Haley, check your Discord. I'll send you the link now.
While we're waiting, I think Jamie's gonna pop in here too. So we're gonna rate each aspect of his work for his entire career on a scale of 1 to 10. That's what we do this. We do this with every single wrestler that we do with Career Retrospective.
We started with Will today.
Yeah, so we're going to start with in-ring work. Will, how would you rate Eddie Guerrero's in-ring work?
Out of 10, I would give Eddie's in-ring work, I'd probably say an 8 out of 10. I feel like when it comes to traditional lucha libre, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. But when it comes to traditional American wrestling, and that's, you know, what the highest grade would be. You know what I mean? He was the top guy, but he was never seen as being the best in-ring worker.
I could agree with that. Jamie.
Kind of piggybacking off of Will, I do think that, you know, he hits good points there. I'm gonna go with a 9 out of 10 though, just because of, you know, the lucha libre style, and then the you know, and then the American more contemporary style, you know, and he was able to bring both of those worlds together and make it his own, pretty much his own style, and that in itself is revolutionary. So with that, I give it a 9.
Right. And hey, Jamie, for the roundtable discussion, could we take the Eddie picture down and have it just be us up here? That way we can see your beautiful face. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the biggest Eddie Guerrero fans I've ever met in my entire life, Haley. Haley, say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Haley does not come on camera. She does not. So this is a very special moment for her. So, Haley, if you were to rate his in-ring work on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say?
1,000.
1,000. We love it. Oh my gosh. No,
I think that's fair.
Shadow.
Okay, I'm gonna get some flack from Haley, so Haley don't stab me. I'm gonna give him a 6.
Whoa. I felt bad for an 8. I thought I would get some heat for that.
Oh my good golly gosh.
Wait.
I just, there's certain parts of his career that I think he could have done better given his talent. So that's why I'm giving an honest 6 out of 10, because I feel like his work could have been so much better in certain spots of his career. Mind you, you have to take in the drug addiction, etc. That kind of probably slowed him down, etc. And I understand that, but this is why I'm giving it a 6.
That is a spicy take.
Gee, I don't know about
That's why you're my boy, Blue. You ain't afraid of shit.
Well,
Jamie, just let you know Trey's coming in.
That's fine. Welcome, Trey, whenever you get here. Trey,
what's up?
Hey, guys.
Let's not be driving.
Oh, no, I'm at work. I'm parked.
Okay. All right. So, Trey, welcome. So let's jump over to you. What do you think about Eddie's in-ring work?
Like we said, he had he had Mexico, he had his American work. Honestly, Mexico work, 10 out of 10. He is the son of Gory Guerrero, and he learned a lot, and his just learning all that. And his American work, I would give it, the matches between him and like Dean Malenko and all that, I thought they were pretty good. I would give about an 8.
8 out of 10. I can feel that. So I'm gonna side with Will here. I felt bad giving him an 8, but now that Shadow's giving him a 6, I don't feel so bad anymore.
Somebody's got to be the asshole here, and it's got to be me.
So I'd say 8 out of 10, if only because I've never watched an Eddie Guerrero match that was like not good. Like his level,
it was always a super electric atmosphere over there in Oakland.
Right. When Eddie was out there, people watched, people paid attention, people were captivated by this man, whether he was this lovable baby face that still lied, cheated, and stole, or this despicable heel that lied, cheat, and stole. He was like one of the rare guys who could do it all. So I say 8 out of 10, if only because I know that working in America, he was held back from what he was allowed to do in Mexico and in New Japan and other companies. But yeah, I would say 8 out of 10. And so it seems like we have a general consensus of 8 or higher minus Shadow. So
hey, it is what it is. All right.
This I feel like is going to be. Shut up, Matt. This is I feel like is going to be a little bit more where we'll probably disagree a little bit more. I feel like some people are going to rank it really high, and some people are going to rank it really low. We're going to say mic work. We're going to start off with Shadow on this one because I want to hear this.
All right. So mic work from the early on to about 03. I'm going to take away China here because I'm going to pay respect to that on its own. But given those time periods, I give it a 4. Give it China and up until his death, I give it a solid 8.
Okay. Haley.
Even though some of them are Spanish, but I still an 8. Sorry, Eddie.
8 out of 10. I like it.
Sorry, Eddie.
Will, what you got for us?
In Espanol, 9. In English, 7.
Okay.
Wait.
Hey, he's like, okay, show me up, asshole.
Okay. So this is what I heard. I heard in Spanish, I'm telling you my number, 9, and then I'm going to tell you my number in English, 7. It's not the right numbers. You meant his promos in Spanish, a 9.
9.
His
His
promos in English are a 7.
7.
Okay.
Yes.
Because imagine my confusion when I was like, hold up, 9 is 9. Trey.
Well, I might not go with the language barrier because I'm gonna go like you said, when he was Latino Heat, like in the beginning, when he started with the Radicals and stuff, it was about maybe 4 or 5. But I want to say what really got really going is when he was feuding with Brock Lesnar for the championship, and he had that big, big promo against Brock when he was talking about his what he went through and all that, and you could feel that, and especially when he turned heel on Ray, when he had his mask, that was some good. So I want to say I wouldn't go by the language barrier, but I would go by like from the time frame, 4 or 5 during his Latino Heat, and when he came back, and then he started feuding with Brock and Ray, I want to give like about an 8.
Fair enough, Jamie.
Alrighty, so for me, I'm gonna go pre-China stuff pretty much. Give it about a 3, and then past that, we're gonna go about 8.5, just because the character work with him, and like a lot of people, the character work and the mic work kind of goes hand in hand. So once his character work started actually forming into, transcending his character, the mic work did the work too. So
I'll kind of piggyback off of that too. When Eddie Guerrero, this is something I kind of mentioned a minute ago too. When Eddie Guerrero was in the ring, even if he had a microphone in his hand and he wasn't wrestling, when he was on screen, you watched.
Yeah,
he had a connection with the audience, whether he was a babyface or a heel, that not many wrestlers had or have ever had. I say because of that, because of his charm, he was so charming. Like, he was infectious. If Eddie Guerrero walked up to you at a bar and bought you a drink, you'd be like, "Oh, thank you." You know what I mean? Like, he was that kind of guy. Because of that, and because of the iconic promos that he cut in the later stages of his career, I give him an 8. I mean, he's not the best. He wasn't, cutting pipe bombs here every week, but that pipe bomb he had against Bischoff. If you haven't watched that promo where he just lays into Eric Bischoff, go watch it.
Y'all think Eddie versus Brock promo was intense? Go back and watch that one, because I guarantee it's gonna be like, whoa.
Yeah, like when Eddie was. I mean, we all agree that WWE, professional wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want to say, it's at its best when it blurs the lines of reality and kayfabe.
Yes,
It
Cam.
is at its absolute best. And Eddie Guerrero, when he did that, there was no one better. There was no one better that blurred the lines the way he did, ever. I will say that.
Well, the thing, Kurt Angle said, one of his best rivalries. Kurt Angle said he can make you laugh, make you cry, make you pissed off at him. He had it all. He can make you show different emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And so that brings us towards our next category.
Cam gives the mic work a 6 out of 10.
Oh, get out of here, Cam. That's all right. You're still not. I'm still not as mad at you as I am at Matt, because Matt was just being dumb earlier.
Get that garbage out of here.
But Trey, I'm actually gonna let you start this one off. What do you think about his babyface work?
Babyface. Okay, I know he had a babyface run after he left the Radicals and he was with China. That wasn't really much of a, because he didn't really show much. And then I want to say, like, when the beginning after the Radicals for a little bit, I want to say it was like a 4 or 5 out of 10. But then when he won the championship and all that, and getting the crowd over, I want to say babyface wise, like maybe 8 out of 10.
That's high.
I can see that. Sorry, Shadow, go ahead.
No, that in my opinion, I respect it, Trey, but that is high for babyface work for him.
Well, I mean, I would say like his later work. And the previous work, I would say like 4 out of 5 in his previous when he left the Radicals. But I see like later on when he like won, when he faced Brock Lesnar and stuff before he turned heel on Ray, I want to say it was like an 8.
Fair.
So okay. I'll say this: when he was in those last like 2 years of his career as this white hot babyface, no one was more loved. Nobody.
Yeah. No. I mean, to this day, we still get Eddie chants, and thank you, Eddie, anytime his name is brought up. So he obviously did something right? So,
like, Eddie Guerrero is not the guy who invented the triple suplex, the Three Amigos. He didn't invent that. But why do we immediately associate it with him? Because, yes, he used it regularly, but him as a person and as a performer left that impact on us that we associate it with him.
Right.
That's why. It's kind of like the GTS. We associate that with CM Punk. I hate to bring that up, but that's the first one that came to mind. He's not the guy who invented it.
No.
But we associate it with him because of the impact that he's left on us.
Right.
Would you all agree with that?
Yeah.
To a degree, yes.
So if we're talking about those last 2 years, 10. I say 10. But overall, for his entire career, yes, his stuff with China could have been better. Mostly because I think China was a terrible wrestler, but that's just my own opinion. Loved China the woman, loved China the character, terrible wrestler. So I'd say that brings him down to about an 8 overall for his career. And I will let Shadow go off of me for that one.
No, that's your opinion, and that's what matters here, right?
I was saying it's your turn.
Yeah. But, I look back at it, and like I said, I give that too high for Trey, and just even yours is too high, in my opinion. You take out the last 2 years, and his babyface work is a 3.
Whoa.
And I feel, and I'm going to preface this because we are going to get into the heel work next after everybody's gone. But the reason I say a 3, my preface to it is the fact that I don't consider Eddie a heel or a face. He was a very much red hot anti-hero tweener. He did things his own way and stuff like that. So that's my preface to it. So my face work for him is a 3. And then you add in, like Nate said, the final 2 years, that bumps it up to an 8 for me.
Absolutely.
Okay, your final is an 8, so I'm okay with that. Right. Who wants to go next? We got Haley, Jamie, and Will. Let's throw it over to Haley, actually. Let's go, girl.
I started watching wrestling when I was 4, so 2004, so an 8. I didn't watch the 2000s.
Okay.
Because I was just a toddler.
That's valid.
Mr. Gray?
I'm going to say babyface work is a 5. Because if you take the 10, that is those last 2 or 3 years, and you average it out with a fucking 2 the rest of his career, you're gonna get a 5. He just wasn't a babyface guy. I'm sorry.
Right.
Eddie was a heel. It's so much
Yeah.
so, and we'll get to it next, and I'll spill my guts then. But
We'll let-
nobody
I bet you
thinks
will.
of Eddie Guerrero as a good babyface.
I'm with Will on that. You know, you have you have the baby last 2 years, but when you're talking about kind of doing his own thing, kind of Deadpooling it and maybe anti-hero at times for his own benefit, mind you, that kind of lays out to a 5 to me also.
So before we go into the heel, I just
Yes.
thought of this while we were sitting here. We all associate, Eddie being the baby face. I hate to say it like this, and I love all the Eddie Guerrero fans and Eddie himself, but you got to think the reason he became such a big baby face is because he used his addiction and his past story to get there and get over with the crowd.
People resonate with that.
Right. And that's what he used. That's the problem. That's not a problem, but you know what I'm getting at with that.
Yes.
It's like Roman Reigns using his leukemia became a super baby face.
Yeah.
And then went heel.
Yeah.
It's very different. I understand.
Another time.
But it's very different. I understand. But I'm just saying that it's the same context of situation of pulling the crowd in with you.
For what it's worth, Roman was not okay with that, and that's the reason why he almost left WWE in 2020.
Fair, but I'm just using that as my point of argument
Right.
here. I didn't say Roman agreed with it. I'm just saying that's what the point
and
was.
it's very valid, 100% valid, because WWE has done that a lot in the past. Luckily, it doesn't seem like they do that anymore. But that was something they would exploit real life things that they shouldn't be exploiting.
I think they learned that from Jeff Hardy because they exploited him and look what happened.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
They started with the Edge and Matt. Well, I mean, I didn't start with the Edge and Matt Hardy thing, but Edge and Matt Hardy was one of the first ones that I remember being that big. Let's take this real life thing of Lita being a homie hopper and put it on national TV. Let's fire Matt for some stupid ass reason and then bring him back to feud with Edge. Great feud, by the way. The two of them are good friends nowadays because, it was.
I hate to do this. Cam wants to come in and say something, so I sent him the invite because apparently we're all trash talking Eddie too much.
That's fine. While we're waiting for Cam, Will, spill your guts on his heel work, man.
When it comes to good classic heel work, okay, I've interviewed a wrestler or two, and they've all said the same thing. Memphis gets over everywhere all the time. And what they mean by that is good traditional heel work. And that was Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was the type of heel that people love to hate no matter what. He could take a ketchup popsicle and sell it to a woman in white gloves. And then she would get mad. And he could make her mad at herself for eating the popsicle. Like, that's how good he was at his job. He could make people despise him. He could also then make people love him. When it came down to what he was as a worker, he was the quintessential epitome of a traditional heel. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
So out of 10?
9 out of 10.
Fair enough. Cam, welcome our off the top brother. What you got for us?
So
we're just missing Scales up in here.
I had to join after what I heard Will say.
Hey.
Now, so realistically, I've only really known, what a heel and what a babyface really means for the last, 10, 12, 13 years or so. So growing up watching Eddie Guerrero, I didn't really know what a heel and babyface was, obviously. So, but to hear Will say, like, Eddie just wasn't a good babyface, knowing what a babyface and a heel is now, I got to disagree with that because I think he was one of the guys that kind of blurred the lines between the two because he could play either or. You could love him as a babyface with him doing heel tactics and he still get over and still be kissing babies and high-fiving people and stuff like that, just be fun-loving good guy, and he could play a heel with doing the same exact tactics, but with a meaner, more evil demeanor about it. So I think he can do both, and I think he was a perfect 10 in both, and that's rare nowadays. Some people are just better at playing heel. Some people are better at playing babyface, but not. You don't see a talent who's good at both. So
Jesus Christ, Sammy.
So, oh my God, I just read Sammy's comment. Okay.
Right?
Our producer extraordinaire, what do you got for us?
Man, Eddie is a heel. 10 out of 10.
Damn.
Shadow?
I'm gonna say the same.
Damn. Haley?
1,000.
Yeah, it's on board for the track. Yep, here we go.
Ray?
I'm gonna say 10 out of 10, but can I? And I know I like to ramble, but
That's
I'm
fine. That's
born
fine.
a rambling man.
it's 10 out of 10. But let's make it clear, because his whole lie, cheat, and steal. He's like one of the few wrestlers to make. I mean, maybe I don't know if you guys could correct me on this. To make cheating, when he would cheat, he would get cheered, because usually cheating is a heel thing, right? So I wanted to go back to where he would throw the chair at someone, make it seem like blind the ref, and it looked like he got laid out by the chair, and everyone would be cheering like, "Oh my God, he's getting it over!" Like he's, I don't know. I just think it was just he was smart doing that.
Yeah,
making heel work, and have people cheer for it.
What you're saying is you're making heel work.
That was and he did do that a lot, especially during the last 2-3 years, especially in the feud with Layfield, because he was coming in that as the baby, Bradshaw, the huge heel. That's the thing. I don't want to use the word tweener there, because at that point he pretty much was definitive babyface, but he's using those tendencies to really get himself over like that. Yeah, I do. Oh man.
Can I say, and dare I say, that Eddie Guerrero pretty much solidified what a heel in wrestling is now? Like nowadays, for now.
I could see that. So before we move on to the next section, I'm going to throw my little 2 cents about his heel work. When I was 9-10 years old, 2004, 2005, I didn't understand the full complexities between baby faces and heels. To me, it was just, this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy. I wasn't, conditioned the way that we are now to understand what a baby face is and what a heel is. It was just good and bad. That being said, there were some heels that even back then I really enjoyed watching because of how good they were at what they did. There was, Kurt Angle was a good heel. Randy Orton was a good heel in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. There were 2 guys that I absolutely despised. I despised them as a little kid. Edge and Eddie Guerrero.
Damn.
I can't say that about anyone else. And luckily, in late 2005, before Eddie passed, Shawn Michaels put out, I know I talk about Shawn Michaels a lot, but hear me out. Shawn Michaels put out his autobiography, Heartbreak and Triumph. I have it. It's one of my favorite books to read. In the very opening, section of the book, he describes the difference between a babyface and a heel and why they're important. That's when I was like, Eddie's fucking good at this. Eddie is fantastic at this. Edge is fantastic at this. They're making me hate them to their core because of how good they are at being this heel character. And then Eddie turned babyface and all was right with the world. So I got to say 10 out of 10 because only 2 people made me despise them. And it was Edge and it was Eddie.
Yep. And just kind of not trying to go back into what we've talked before, but on the in-ring work of Eddie, I think when we're talking about all these things combined, when I went to one of the cons a few months back and actually got to speak with Layfield, he said that one of the, if not the best person in the ring that he's worked with is Eddie. He said he's probably just one of the few guys that get it, So he was probably his favorite rival in his career.
with respect and due diligence to Straight Shoots, Mr. Tesh, he has also said on record many times that Eddie is a great person to sit down and talk with. He enjoyed it. He'll pull you aside to have a conversation. From all my experiences hearing about Eddie, I've never met the man. I tried to, but it never worked out, for obvious reasons. But it's good to hear like when fans and wrestlers alike have the same opinion on Eddie the man, as opposed to Eddie the wrestler.
Yeah. And that was like when I was that age, Eddie Guerrero was the first major death that I mean I can't really say I experienced it because I didn't experience it, but I witnessed the fallout and I witnessed everything. I'd never seen anything like that before. Like, so that was like my introduction to that.
Right.
Like, yeah,
that's when it became real for you.
That's when everything became so real to me. I'm like, these are people. These are real people. They're like, they have lives. They have wives and kids and families. And this man, 37 years old, is just gone.
He was 38.
Where it became probably more than kayfabe to you.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that, like I said
They
earlier,
didn't even know what kayfabe meant then, but yeah.
The whole tribute show that just shattered the fourth wall because there was nothing else they could do.
Yeah.
It's bad. It was amazing that they responded that way, but it was just awful to witness.
Well, you know what chokes me up till this day. When Eddie won his Eddie won his championship, and he got hugs backstage from everyone showing him that he did it. And I know people talk shit about Vince, but I'm going to say this: when Eddie left and came back, Vince had him come back after he got clean, and Eddie, and then Eddie finally getting that championship, and he hugged Vince because he considered Vince like a second father figure besides his actual father. And to see hugging Vince backstage, and Vince is giving a big huge hug, like like I'm proud of you. It gets to me every time.
Well, it's very much emotional. It's very much emotional.
Will, if you could, I don't know if how knowledgeable you are about the whole situation there, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Brock Lesnar only wanted to drop the title to Eddie. Is that correct? Because I remember reading that many times before. I don't know if you know that, have knowledge of that more than I do. If you do, please share. If anyone else does, please share.
The one thing I can confirm about Brock Lesnar's contract is he has final say in creative in everything. So if that meant they decided that man was dropping the belt, he chose who he was dropping the belt to, or he wouldn't have been okay with it. And still to this day, he still has kind of carte blanche on his contract.
Oh, yeah.
He can still do whatever he wants whenever he wants. That's why he's always a free agent.
Right.
He's he's the attraction.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, even back then, if Brock wanted to drop the belt, Brock chose who to drop the belt to.
Right. And for what it's worth, Brock is one of the best businessmen and one of the most giving performers ever.
Don't let Megan hear you say that.
That's
definitely
Don't let Megan.
Underrated seller.
So let's get into like the final rankings here. We're gonna rate everything all wrapped into 1 out of 10. So his overall body of work, that's in-ring, mic, babyface, heel work, character work, whatever you want to name it, everything together.
Before we start that, I have a general question for you guys.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe, had Eddie not passed, does he still make the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
Be non-biased. Be non-biased with this.
Absolutely.
I think so, and I do believe so, and it's those last 2 years that did it.
Okay.
It's those last two, because those last 2 years were the best 2 years of his career, and I don't think that's too much of a stretch to say that.
I don't.
His feud with Brock was top tier. His feud with Rey Mysterio is one of the most memorable feuds we've ever had, and that's when
people talk about Eddie Guerrero, the one match that always seems to come to mind, whether you're a true fan to this day or not, is Halloween Havoc '97 with Rey and Eddie.
One of the top 5 matches to ever happen in WCW. from an in-ring standpoint.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean it's up there with like the Flairs and Sting and all that.
Oh,
right?
Sting
Like,
and Flair from the early '90s. Sting and Flair, not late '90s.
You know, I'm gonna be that guy. You know, just because of how the WWE's Hall of Fame does work. If say that didn't happen, just I'm not looking into the mind of Jamie Rose. I'm looking in the mind of maybe a Vince McMahon or Bruce Pritchard. So when I'm looking into that, you know, I'm like, well, when from the years 2000 to 2005, it's a 5-year run, not that long of a run considering, you know, it's just that's the
it's
thing.
only too short. It's only 2 years shorter than the Rock's.
That's true. That's true. But The Rock is The Rock, you know.
I mean, the Rock is mid as fuck. But anyways,
hey, it's all about the bloodline, you know. But when you think about it, I'm sorry, I had a blonde moment. But you know, yes, you have the scouts, you got the WCW history to include, but at the same time, there's so much time that you don't know what would happen. So to say that if this didn't happen, this would happen still, when there's so much time that anything could have happened and been a variable. That's kind of I don't know, trying to play devil's advocate with infinite space, just hypothetical. But I'm sounding like an idiot right now, so I'll just stop talking.
If you're thinking of it like that, I can put it to you like this: if we're thinking of, you know, the what if scenario, I think it would still have happened. Why? Because, well, number one, Vince McMahon was so close to Eddie Guerrero, and obviously he was just like, you know what I'm saying? Like they were so close, and I feel like Vince looked at Eddie as like the heart and soul of the product at the time. So regardless, Vince would have wanted him to be in the Hall of Fame. If he hadn't passed, he still would have been in the Hall of Fame, 100%. So that's just how I look at it. Aside from his body of work and all of that.
So. Oh yeah, and I mean a couple of arguments that I always love to throw at people. I have two of them that are really big now. One is the Bushwhackers are in the Hall of Fame. I'm just gonna throw that right out there. And number two, the Great Muta got inducted this year. He never set foot in a WWE ring. So like the parameters for what includes a Hall of Famer are very blurred and very nondescript. It's basically if I want you to be in the Hall of Fame, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. And I don't think Vince would let Eddie Guerrero not be in the Hall of Fame, as Cam was saying. He was very much a Vince guy. Vince took care of him. Vince helped his family out. Vince paid for his rehab. Like, yeah, there's a lot of bad things about Vince McMahon, but there's a lot of things that he did do that I respect. And one of those things is he paid for his wrestlers to go to rehab. He paid for his wrestlers to get clean. I respect the hell out of that because it's not always easy. But I think, yeah, Eddie's in the Hall of Fame, even if he hadn't, you know, passed when he did. Had he continued for another 5-6 years into his 40s, who knows what we would have seen? We would have gotten Eddie versus HBK. We would have gotten probably another world title run or two.
So here's my argument for why I brought up the question. Eddie deserves it, 100%. Had his career and life not been cut short, I don't think he gets in because the longer he would have gone, the less effective he would have been.
I mean, I could see that. However, I think there were too many iconic moments that he had already been responsible for, and being partially responsible for bringing cruiserweight wrestling to the United States, I think are too big. You know, it's a couple of massive things that just wouldn't get overlooked.
Fair enough. That's why this is great, and this is why we have these kind of shows, because it's all opinion based, and this is fun.
Speaking of iconic Eddie Guerrero moments, we're gonna go over a few of them, and I'm gonna have everyone in this little thing here, this little pyramid, reverse pyramid, talk about their favorite Eddie Guerrero matches, moments, promos, things like that. So we're gonna start with the matches. Cam, I'll let you go first since you were a late join here. What is your favorite match that you ever watched Eddie Guerrero participate in?
Ooh. So
if you can't narrow it down, name a couple. I don't care.
So I'm gonna exclude the Halloween Havoc match because I feel like everybody says that. Aside from that, probably when Eddie and Ray won tag team titles from Eminem. I like that match simply because, like I said again, Eddie and Ray have such great chemistry, whether they're opponents, whether they're tag team, and it was a phenomenal match. So yeah, that was one of my favorite matches, and I remember seeing that growing up, and being just the joy I felt again, not knowing about kayfabe and baby faces and heels and things like that. So seeing that joy, seeing these two people that I looked up as superheroes, see them win it was amazing. So yeah, I definitely gotta say, seeing him win tag team championships with, his boy, his brother, Rey Mysterio was pretty cool.
I love that. And I think we can just go around the horn with this one. Haley, what's next?
I don't remember the first match I saw because I was 4. But when Eddie beat Brock for the title, and this was after my birthday when Eddie finally beat Ray in the steel cage.
Which again, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Very underrated match
And
because
also
it was pay-per-view.
And also his underrated theme song is what he used. Gangster Lane.
Oh yeah. Jamie, what you got for us?
Sorry. So my favorite Eddie Guerrero match is actually one of the most violent matches in WWE history. It's Judgment Day 04, him against John Bradshaw Layfield for the WWE Championship. So the rivalry. Oh yeah, absolutely. So the rivalry in general was very personal. Even to the point where JBL had Eddie's mother have a heart attack in El Paso, which is nuclear to do.
JBL was so good. Shit.
So with that being said, just all of that just finally just boiling down to the point where they have this match and they laid it all on the line in about almost 40 minutes with chair shots, belt shots, all just everything you could think of. The psychology was there. It was great. It was wrestling is not only in namesake. It was an amazing match. It was one of the first actually, my mom, my biological mom, when she was introducing us to wrestling, that was the tape that she had, and we watched that thing all the time. I thought Mordecai was an absolute joke, and this match on the main event was absolutely awesome. So that's been my favorite.
I think Haley just changed her shirt mid podcast.
I think she did, but that was my favorite.
Jamie,
match.
was that the match where when Eddie bladed to get the blood out, he hit his artery, didn't he?
Yes.
And he had to get stitches and shit. Like he had to be coaxed into going into the hospital because he didn't want to go to the hospital.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I remember that match because that was one of the first pay-per-views I remember watching because my family was very modest. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Very humble.
I mean, I was dirt poor living in the trailer park growing up. So we went to the pawn shops down by the freaking Bell Bondsman to go get WWE tapes, and it was the Hard Knocks about Benoit, and then the Judgment Day 04. So those were the two tapes that really got me going into the wrestling space. So
Judgment Day, one of my friends actually called me, and he's like on my flip phone. He called me and he was like, "Hey, we're buying the pay-per-view this Sunday. We're watching Judgment Day. Come watch it." So I went and watched it, and that was one of the matches on the card, and I loved it. I just remember Eddie was just covered in blood.
Yeah.
Trey.
Mask.
Trey, what's your favorite Eddie match?
Well, there's a few. I mean, I like the one between him and Kurt at WrestleMania 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I also enjoyed, him between him and JBL. and of course the Halloween Havoc. With that I could bring that up. There's so many. I know. Well, one of mine, I know it's underlooked, and I know a fan kind of messed it up. But I like the ladder match between him and RVD on Monday Night Raw. It was for the Intercontinental, and it was a good match until the fan decided to push the ladder while Eddie was still on it. But
He beat the shit out of him, though.
the ref got out of there, and I think Eddie punched him too.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things I love. The superstars have full permission to beat the shit out of any fan that comes over that guardrail, and
like why are you gonna mess up a match between like RVD and Eddie Guerrero, like a ladder match? Like I mean, it's dumb regardless going in there, but you're just ruining the whole match, man.
Right.
Narcissistic, self-centeredness.
Same reason people streak at football games.
Attention.
Well,
I have 3. Divide Eddie's career up into 3 different pieces.
all right.
At one point in CMLL, him and Art Barr were the tag champions, and there was a vacant light heavyweight championship. And those two had an absolute banger of a match to determine the new light heavyweight champion. You fast forward through to WrestleMania 21, and it's very reminiscent of the story that was built between him and Ray. And that's why I bring this specifically up, is because those 2 stories bookend his career. You see what I mean? Like that's a key factor in Eddie's career, and they were both absolute bangers of the match. And then right in this center, in what I consider maybe the best match in WCW history, is the '97 Halloween Havoc.
Oh yeah.
The Mask versus career. It was Mask versus title, because if Ray lost, he had to take the mask off. If Eddie lost, Ray got the title from him, and that was chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
From the chef himself.
Shadarius.
So, kind of like Will, I kind of just going to break it into 2. I have 2 favorite WCW matches, and that's Ric Flair versus Eddie Guerrero at Nitro '96, and Benoit and Eddie Nitro '95. And then, obviously, we have Eddie's matches with Ray in WWE. Halloween Havoc just goes without saying. So, I mean, that's just a no-brainer for everybody. Brock versus Eddie is still one of my favorite matches to this day. Just because of the raw emotion that it was, even with the win. And then, as much heat as Kennedy gets for this, Eddie's last match was a phenomenal match with Mr. Kennedy. I mean, the man, you have a conversation with Kennedy, and he says a lot of fans still blame him for Eddie's death, which is not fair because it had nothing to do with Mr. Kennedy at all.
Eddie had an underlying heart condition,
and he took that to heart for a long time, and he says that too. Is he really ate it from the fans for that, and that's not fair from a fan perspective to ever put that on anybody. I don't care who you are.
Agreed.
So overall, though, it's Halloween '97.
Oh yeah. So my favorite match, and I'm going to tell you why.
Tell me why. Oh, sorry.
It's not Eddie versus Ray from Halloween Havoc, which it probably should be based on how good of a match that is. But it's Eddie versus Ray from SummerSlam 2005 in the ladder match, and I will tell you why. Being a little kid at the time, again, sorry, Will.
I felt that in my heart, Nate.
This was the match that completely showed me what WWE was about, what sports entertainment was. This was the match that took everything that you thought you knew about wrestling, turned it upside down, and threw it in your face with one of the most ridiculous, over-the-top, hilarious, at times, storylines. The whole custody battle for Dominic Mysterio, who just grows up to be a convict anyways, so who wins that one? But
Eddie Guerrero.
And the thing about that match is I went to see SummerSlam 2005 at a movie theater and had front row seats. So when Eddie Guerrero, this is again where I talk about how Eddie Guerrero just made me despise him. When Eddie Guerrero came out and entered for that match, everyone in our row, in the row behind us, and probably a bunch of rows back too, started throwing popcorn at the screen and booing. booing so loud that I couldn't hear Eddie Guerrero's music over the booing in the movie theater.
How rude.
And that is when I'm just like that was my first taste of what it would be like to be at an actual WWE event. And that match was the reason for it. This is the same show that had Hogan and Michaels. Again, people threw popcorn when Hogan came out, even though he was the babyface in the feud. I didn't want Hogan to win. But that match is what truly brought me into sports entertainment and understanding it for what it is. So it's not just because of the in-ring quality. It's because of what that match represents for me. And that is why that's my favorite match from him.
Valid.
And so we'll go around the other way this time. This one might be a very unanimous or close to unanimous, but we can go on and talk about what is your favorite moment or favorite promo. We can do either or that Eddie Guerrero was a part of. So any promo that Eddie Guerrero cut himself or any moment that Eddie Guerrero was directly involved in. And I will start with Shadow this time.
I only have two, and that's the Brock Lesnar promo and the championship win that he's so well deserved.
Beautiful, beautiful. Will?
The Lesnar promo, I think, is his best promo, so I agree there for sure. But my favorite story outside of the Cruiserweight title was the Chavo Eddie Uncle Pepe story where Chavo lost his fucking mind. I'm sorry. That was one of the funniest 18 months in wrestling. Like Chavo's slow decline into insanity is beautiful. They had great comedic work the whole time on top of great in-ring work. It was great. So that's probably my favorite story is the Eddie Chavo Uncle Pepe line.
Yeah, like I said, I gotta watch more video on that because all I did was read about it and I saw a couple of clips. That was it. Trey.
Well, the story. Well, I've heard more of it from JBL's side on the podcast with him and Briscoe, but it was when they were in El Paso, which the Guerrero family are gods in El Paso, and this is when when they showed the house show where they were trying to pay tribute to Eddie's mom, and then she has a heart attack, and the story is that everyone got so mad because they didn't know it was a work, and so once she's passed, she's a good actress. She fell down. Well, actually, Eddie Guerrero's brother said that she should have clotheslined their mother, but Jimmy was like, "I'm not going to clothesline your mother. What the hell?"
Yeah.
And so El Paso, they're like, "What happened to her?" So Eddie tells JBL, "Hey, SA, you better leave. They're gonna kill you." And so that's when JBL had to go to a whole different county because JBL would have became it would have been nothing but a hat after they would have got a hold of him.
Oh yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that too because when you say that the Guerrero family are basically gods in El Paso, what's that opening line from Cody Rhodes' entrance? Wrestling has more than one royal family. You think the royal family is, you think the Anoa'i family, The Rock, Roman Reigns, Rikishi, all the Samoan dynasty, the Wild Samoans. You think the Rhodes family, Dusty Rhodes, Cody Rhodes, think the Flairs. The Guerreros are legitimate wrestling royalty. Like Latinos, from the Latino side of things, the Colones and the Guerreros are crucial to the product that we see today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Also,
I would put what's that?
No, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was
gonna say also the Von Erich family.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for that movie, by the way.
Yeah, but the Von Erich
me
movie is
too.
the Von Erich story is such a tragedy after tragedy. Man.
Oh,
It's
it is.
Oh yeah, the most cursed family in wrestling. Just terrible. I'm actually super excited for that movie though. So I'm kind of.
You guys know
Zac Efron is in it, which blows my mind because he's like 5'5".
When it comes out?
I think it's supposed to be next spring, actually.
Oh,
I'll have to double check, but.
And then you got another family that's really integral to the wrestling business, but you don't think
The
of
Hogans.
them on higher. Hell no. But on that higher level, you got the Graham family, Florida territory, all that, Dr. Jerry and all them. So. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The McMahon family.
The McMahons. Jamie, what's your favorite Eddie Guerrero moment or promo?
the Eddie promo on Brock, and then the winning of the championship. I mean, it's and then also for me, because that's the time I started becoming a fan, and the tapes that I watched. That I'm gonna say it, my favorite moment, especially for the longest time, and I just can't ever say it's not, was the ending to WrestleMania.
That's very valid, though. That's very valid.
Because no matter what your opinion is, that moment right there is just a moment etched in history. So,
absolutely, Haley.
I have 3.
Let's hear them, bro.
Okay, so it's the Brock
Just
and
3?
Well, could be more, but Brock of Eddie, of course. The Eddie bedtime story. And a funny one when Kurt Angle was trying to steal Eddie's lowrider.
Yes. The Eddie the bedtime story, that's where he was telling Rey Mysterio about Dominic, right? Or telling the people about Dominic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that. He did that a couple times, didn't he? Wasn't that like a segment that popped up a few times through that feud?
Yeah.
One of them Vicky interrupted.
Yep,
it was
right.
It was definitely a UPN favorite. So,
oh yeah,
UPN.
Oh, you know what? Oh my
The
God,
UPN
you're going way back on that shit, man.
The UPN
I'm aging
SmackDown
myself
days
here.
were absolute fire. I'm just
And
gonna
also-
throw that out there.
Also, when Eddie. Also, when
Yeah,
Eddie
go ahead.
Guerrero. What? Also, when Eddie Guerrero sprayed, you know what, on Big Show.
When he took a big old shit on Big Show, yeah, that was great.
Yep. Cam, we'll hop it over to you.
Okay, so I have it's a lot, so forgive me because this is like long-winded. But obviously, so for promo wise, I really had to think about that. But promo wise, I'd say it's probably the "I'm Your Poppy" promo because that just solidified his heel run. Moments, I mean, I've got a lot of moments. Probably like, when he stole Kurt Angle's stuff and was just making fun of him, drew on the Kurt Angle picture or whatever. That was hilarious. He had a feud with Cena. It was more of a Cena moment, kind of, but Cena
The
had
rap
stole
battle?
the rim off his lowrider. That was great. When he actually turned on Ray, even though that was like a heartbreaking, crushing moment, when he turns on Ray, it was still one of those moments I look back on, and I'm like, man, that he killed that moment, and like again, he was just a great heel. So definitely that moment as well. And then probably my number one moment that I remember from him is when I went to my very first show, and this was actually, sadly, his last match. So I went to my very first show. My dad took me to my very first SmackDown show. And I'm like, looking at the arena, and I'm like, oh, man, everything looks so much bigger, in person or whatever.
Yeah, that's what she
and
said.
so I actually saw,
What were you saying?
his first, that was my first show. And I think around that time, Eddie was still a heel. So I'm expecting, I'm expecting him to come out with, his heel theme or whatever. But it was that same night that he turned back into a face. So he came out with the old I Lied, Shit, I Steal theme. So everybody goes crazy when he comes out. So I always remember that because, number one, that was my first show, first ever SmackDown show. And, of course, that was the first time I got to see, my childhood hero, Eddie Guerrero, wrestle in person. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I like hearing stories like that. It's great.
So I have a few. The Addiction promo, obviously, I think everyone here has mentioned that one. We'll take it. We'll put it away. I have a few that are really, really funny. There was a match that Eddie Guerrero had with Kurt Angle on an episode of SmackDown where they were just repeatedly tossing the chair back and forth to each other. It was a match to determine, it was in a tournament to be the number one contender for the WWE title. But they kept tossing the chair back and forth, and it was so funny. Another one, a lot of people, I don't know if you remember the golfer gimmick that Chavo Guerrero did as Kerwin White.
Oh, God.
Let's talk about some other golfing things. Does anyone remember the segment where Eddie Guerrero and Chavo played golf at a country club?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Funniest segments I've ever seen in my life. Friggin' Chavo Guerrero with the stupid little like tiny sun hat. Oh my god, it was so funny. They were playing against the two stuffy white guys.
Hey,
Oh my god.
just for context here, Will Gray currently looks like Chavo back then.
I did.
The current white.
Oh god.
And there was actually, it's funny that you're wearing the MJF scarf. MJF is actually in the Von Erich movie too.
It's Burberry.
Yep. But anyways, and there's one more that I completely forgot about until I stumbled across it today. There was a time when Chavo Guerrero was injured, and Eddie was teaming with Tajiri. And there was a match that they had where they lost the tag titles to Benjamin and Haas, Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas. There was a moment in the match where Tajiri fell off the ring apron and landed on Eddie's lowrider. And instead of helping him, and he completely turns on Tajiri and just beats the hell out of him
I remember
on top of his lowrider and did more damage to his lowrider than Tajiri did. It was so damn funny to me, and I don't know why. Because Tajiri was this guy that just didn't speak any English, and he fell on the car accidentally. It was so damn funny. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it.
It's funny because damaging your own shit is hilarious.
It is. It's especially because he was just so mad that it was damaged in the first place. Oh my god, there was so much that he did. And then there was one where I think Batista stole food from him backstage. That one was fucking hilarious too.
I was just about to bring that up.
We could go on for days. So we'll pop over to the next one. This was one that I feel like a lot of us are going to have similar answers to. I'm actually going to go first with this one, if that's okay with you guys, because I haven't gone first on any of these yet. So we're going to talk about dream matches that we would have loved to see Eddie Guerrero participate in. I think the most obvious one is the one that we were supposed to get but never got, and that was Shawn Michaels. Those two would have torn the house down. I have a couple others that I was kind of pondering in my head. In terms of in-ring quality, Seth Rollins, the character that he is right now, against heel Eddie Guerrero would have been an amazing feud. Amazing matches would have resulted. Give me AJ Styles with the OC against the LWO or Los Guerreros and Rey Mysterio, something like that. That doesn't have to be – it could be a feud with all of them, but at least one-on-one match between Eddie and AJ. And then, for storyline purposes only, Dominic Mysterio.
Guerrero.
I would have loved to see that, especially now. But anyways, we'll go down to Jamie.
I got a few. You took one of them, but not that time period. I was thinking, give me, lie, cheat, and still Eddie Guerrero versus kind of babyface AJ Styles TNA time period.
Short-haired AJ Styles.
Yes, I think that would be a freaking clinic. And then also give me from the TNA era, give me any pretty much era of Eddie Guerrero versus that TNA era Samoa Joe. That would be an awesome match. So,
hell yeah. Trey, what do you got for dream matches for us?
Okay, so we talk about, of course, Eddie, HBK. I mean, hell, even, during the Yes movement, Daniel Bryan versus Eddie Guerrero would have been a banger.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about AJ Styles, and I might be biased, but I would have loved to see, and I'm being an Undertaker fan here, but I would love to see Undertaker versus Eddie. Maybe they never really got a match. Undertaker never really faced Eddie.
Nothing major, no.
And I mean, maybe a WrestleMania match or some sort of feud where you could see Eddie being the heel, but he's trying to he's scared, but he's kind of trying to cheat his way to try to bring to end the streak or some sort.
Steal the urn, lie about it, and then try to cheat the win.
Yeah.
So, as you were saying that, you mentioned Eddie Guerrero versus Yes Movement Daniel Bryan. Picture this. Take Randy Orton out of that whole storyline. No authority. Heel Eddie Guerrero cheating and lying his way to the Money in the Bank briefcase. Cashing it in after Daniel Bryan beats John Cena at SummerSlam. and then keeps lying and cheating his way to retaining the title until Daniel Bryan faces him at WrestleMania the next year. Can you imagine the heat Eddie would have gotten from that at that moment in time?
Oh yeah.
Thank you for that, Trey. The wheels kept turning as soon as you said that, and I'm like, holy shit, that would have been fire. But now we'll go over to this column over here. Cam, what do you got for us?
So I hate repeating what most of y'all have already said, but obviously AJ Styles, obviously. I would say Adam Cole. I'm a huge Adam Cole guy. So
hell yeah.
Adam Cole.
Baby.
I would say Santos Escobar. That would be fire.
Ooh. Yes, it would.
I would say Axiom from NXT. I'm a big Axiom guy.
Underrated.
And then last, I would say probably LA Knight.
Yeah.
So Mikey P in the comments says Montez versus Eddie, and then Scals went and one-upped him. Montez versus Eddie versus Rob Van Dam in a battle of the frog splashes.
I was going to say that.
Guilty as charged.
I absolutely love that. If you're going to do that, you got to throw Kevin Owens in there too. He has a beautiful frog splash, and why not just make it a 6-man match? Give me Seth and Logan Paul also. I don't care.
How about
and
put Logan Paul in it.
I loved how Cam was thinking with Escobar, but have it in AAA. Have Eddie Guerrero versus El Hijo del Fantasma. That would be fire. Triple Mania. Boom.
Or Vikingo. I'd like to see him face Vikingo.
Have them all in a match together.
Yeah, we can hop over to Haley.
Put them all in there, dude.
Haley, what are some dream matches you would have loved to see Eddie in?
Well, first they stole my idea of the frog splash thing.
I love that.
Eddie of Dom, of course.
Yes.
Eddie and Sammy Guevara.
Damn it.
Ooh.
Because I like
Sammy.
Sammy.
That.
Yes, sir.
The Spanish God.
Eddie versus Darby.
Yeah.
I say Sting.
I like that.
Eddie versus Sting would have been so fire if we
back
got
in
it.
WCW. Oh.
And I've seen people saying
Late WCW.
Kenny Omega and Eddie.
Kenny Omega and anybody.
Or one of the Young Bucks.
Banger.
Los Guerreros versus the Young Bucks. Let's go.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but
no, you're good.
I'm sorry there was one that I would love to see, and I know he's not a big fan of a lot of people, but back in the WWE, imagine Alberto Del Rio versus Eddie Guerrero.
Fire.
Very similar styles. I could see it.
Similar. You got a rich Eddie. You got a rich Hispanic, and I could see him coming up to Eddie Guerrero like you know how he used to call people pedal. You're nothing but a dog. He would talk so much that would have been a banger match, big banger.
That's the thing. You have two like rich in lineage, Hispanic wrestlers from that time that both of their family lineages are that makes it right there, especially if you put it in in Mexico City. Boom, you have your money match right there.
How about Eddie versus the other Ray Phoenix?
Ooh.
Phoenix.
Kane, our buddy Kane on TikTok threw one out there that might seem a little obvious once I say it. Will Ospreay.
God damn it.
Shadow's ears are just on fire now, so why don't we go over to Shadow? We'll tell him us some of those.
Well, now I can't say that one or Phoenix, but I got like 5. So give me Eddie versus Okada.
Ooh.
Those styles, luchador versus Chinese strong style, bro. I'm here for it.
Kazuchika Okada, I like it.
Give me Eddie Guerrero versus Marty Scurll.
Okay.
Underrated match.
Give me Eddie versus Sammy Guevara because I feel like they could work proper styles.
Yep.
Again, I go with Cam on this one. Eddie versus Adam Cole.
Baby.
So now I've crossed two different mainstreams. Now going to WWE, give me Seth versus Eddie because that would just would tear the roof down.
Guess what?
Ooh.
All right, and I got one more for AEW, and then I'm done. But Penta versus Eddie.
Ooh.
Let's see that.
Ooh.
Cholo, to be fair, we got Eddie versus Jericho many times.
Yeah.
I like this one right here from Dalton.
Eddie
versus Shinsuke Nakamura.
That'd be
Hey,
fine.
I got one for you. Los
Hold
Guerreros
on.
versus. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm fucking with you.
Oh, bad. Los Guerreros versus the Usos. Lineage versus lineage.
Ooh.
We the ones, and we the doses. I don't know.
What?
I don't know.
Anyways, Will, what's yours?
We're live, pal.
Bad Bunny.
Oh.
Oh.
I hate you for that, but I love you for that.
Damn. That's way out of left field, but I love that.
I actually in a Latino setting, it would have to be in a Latino
Puerto
setting.
Rico,
And one street fight.
Puerto Rico or Mexico or
Yeah.
something like that. It would have to be with a Spanish crowd.
I'm gonna have to make this happen on 2K now because now that's in my head.
Or
Okay,
Carter
another- Eddie and China versus Dom and Rhea.
Ooh.
Ooh, how has no one said that?
Yeah.
How has no one said that?
That's good.
Oh, Scal says Eddie versus Ricochet.
He said that like 3 times.
That's fine. Mikey
Stop naming
P,
the chat, Scals.
Mikey P with Eddie versus The Punishment, Damian Priest, a.k.a. Punishment Martinez. Gotta love Damian Priest. I want to talk about him sometime, but
What about Eddie versus Claudio?
Banger.
that'd be a very
Banger.
weird clash of styles, but I like it.
John Moxley.
I also would love to see, and someone already said it, but Omega versus Eddie would be that'd be crazy.
So I mean, we could probably go hours and hours and hours just
Yeah.
talking about. Yes, Jamie's doing a terrible job. You're right, Scals. I'm just kidding. Hey, get back here.
He gone.
He'll be back. So we're gonna kind of take it before we sign off tonight. Well, I do want to take it a little bit serious with a bonus question that I kind of thought about. It was racking my brain around, and I wanted to know if this would be something that would be appropriate to discuss, and I think it is. When Eddie Guerrero passed, it kind of, and I'm not even going to say kind of, it completely shook the professional wrestling landscape to its very core in a way that we really hadn't seen before. Like, it broke kayfabe for one, because all storylines were just halted. And that was, Vince McMahon straight up said, hey, this is an entertainment show. One of our family members is gone, and this is what we're going to do to honor him. So this is the bonus question that I kind of had for everybody. If you don't want to answer it, don't. I'm not going to force anybody, but where were you when you learned of his passing? Did you find out when you turned on Raw that night? Did you read it online? Did a friend call you? Something like that. So honestly, whoever wants to start, just start.
I'll start. Considering the internet was more filled with 2 girls, 1 cup at the time, we really didn't get our news from there yet.
This is a serious topic, Shadow.
I need chocolate.
Anyways, sorry about that, people. I was actually at basketball practice, and our gym teacher, who was also a huge wrestling fan, I won't use the word mark, but was a huge wrestling fan, broke the news to the team that Eddie had passed. There was a few of us on there, and we were shook. And I got home and I watched Raw, and I think that's one of the few times in my life I actually seen my dad cry.
I feel that. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Cam, let's go.
So I'm pretty sure it was just, from what I can remember from that day, it was just, a regular day in a kid's life, And then I think my mom actually was the one that told me, because I think she saw it on the news. And at first I'm like you're joking, right? there's no way. This got to be a mistake. There's no way. So then I rush out into the living room or whatever, and we turn on the news or whatever, and we see it on the news or whatever, and I'm sitting there like broken. Like I just couldn't believe that this guy that I just seen live, the story that I was just telling you guys like 2 weeks before that, is just gone. Like it was crazy. I couldn't believe it. I called all my wrestling buddy friends who watch wrestling or whatever, and they're just like, what? Like it was this. It's even so that I get goosebumps because even so to this day, like it was the most surreal moment. Again, like Nate, like you had said, it was the moment that you realize like this is real life. Like people that you watch on TV that you look up to and things. This is a real thing that's happening.
It's arguably the moment the wrestling world stood still.
Facts.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy.
So like I wasn't around for the Owen Hart tragedy. I was too young. This was like Cam was saying. This is the one that like was like this is real. This is real life. It was a Sunday. And my next door neighbors, who are actually the people who got me into wrestling, we started off when we were really like 3-4 years old playing the old PlayStation 1 WCW, NWO games, WWF games. Like that's who got me into wrestling. Still in good contact with all of those people today. Came running over to my door and was pounding on the door. No one ever pounded on our door. And he was a year older than me. He was 11 at the time. I was 10. Pounds on the door, and I was actually the one who answered it because I just happened to be in the living room. He goes, "Did you hear? Did you hear?" I'm like, "Hear what?" He goes, "Eddie Guerrero died." And I'm like, "What? Like, what? How? Like, he's not an old guy. Like, what?" And I just remember, like, going over to his house, and it was on the news. It was on... I want to say like CNN or something, like one of those big network newses.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately wanted to go and talk about steroid use because that's what the news loves to do when professional wrestlers die at a young age. They want to go to steroid use.
Don't get me started with Nancy Grace.
Nancy Grace is the worst. Kevin Nash put her in her place once. I remember that.
Yeah,
but anyway,
she was hot.
But anyway, and I just remember sitting there watching, and it didn't really feel like it was a real thing until the next night on Raw when everything was just different. Like, everything. It just that whole week leading up until SmackDown, the tribute show they did for Eddie on SmackDown that week, it felt like it took forever. Mm-hmm. Everything was just moving super slow. Raw was 2 hours back then. It felt like 6. Like, because we got all these video packages, and it was just I had never seen, again, Shadow, you said you'd never seen your father cry. I had never seen my neighbor's dad cry before, or even show any kind of emotion. He's sitting there, tears pouring down his face, because he grew up with Eddie, and he watched him in AAA. He watched him, he spent time in Mexico and watched Eddie Guerrero wrestle in Mexico. Like, this guy was very important to him. And he's just a mess in his recliner, and that's what I remember from it.
Let's go with Haley next.
Yeah, let's go, Haley.
I was 6 years old. I didn't watch the news. Well, my parents did. I don't remember. I was in the bedroom or something. My mom called me on the phone. And I didn't know what was happening. Like I didn't know why are superstars on the stage, and then I started. That's when my mom told me Eddie passed.
All right, who's next here?
I'll take over.
Let's go, Trey.
So I was 13. I was playing my GameCube. I was playing WWE Day of Reckoning on the Ready Game.
Oh.
Okay. And my dad, who was on the internet, my dad was on Yahoo, and he goes, "Son, come here." I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" He goes, because my dad watched like Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erichs back in the day, And of course, he knew about Eddie Guerrero's dad, and he goes, "Hey, Eddie Guerrero passed away," and I'm like, "Nah." Like I was like, "Dad, like I even told my dad to shut up, and he gave me that look, but I was like, "Shut up, like don't say that." He goes, "No, look at the screen," and it showed Edgar Guerrero, his when he was born and when he passed, and I like broke down and like just I don't know, it's crazy how Shadow like we have a similar like what we went through because my dad was kind of the one that got me into wrestling because he wouldn't just watch WWE, but he would watch luchador stuff too. And my dad passed away because Eddie died in November 2005. My dad passed away in March of 2006. And that's when it was heartbreaking because it's just something. Even my dad liked Eddie Guerrero. He goes, my dad thought it was funny where he would just, he would throw the chair and he would lay down. My dad thought that was like funny shit. And but for my dad didn't cry, but you could tell my dad was not much of a crier, but he was like you could tell he was just like damn, like so young. And but yeah, no, it was till this day I still get chills because I went to school the next day. And a lot of people, this is not back when the social media where everything went through. Like I was telling my friends, some of my friends didn't know. I'm like, hey, Eddie passed. Like, no, he didn't. And like one of my friends would try to tell me it was a story. I'm like, no, he actually passed, bro. And then sure enough, the next day he's crying. He's like, you were right. I'm like, bro, why would I say some shit like that? But yeah, that's how I found out.
Ooh, it's getting real up in here tonight, man. That's what I'm talking about. We need this every now and again. So, Jamie,
I really don't have any comment. The thing is little too. I was a little young. I mean, I'm a younger guy, so I didn't understand it or grasp the concept. So I don't really have any insight.
You're not making me feel old.
So let me rephrase then. You were a little bit younger. You didn't really get to see Eddie the way that we saw him. When were you introduced to Eddie Guerrero? I guess. Like, when did you start looking back at his stuff?
About 2007, so I was about 6.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Guess that leaves Will too.
The elder statesman of the group.
Oh, for God's sake.
November of 2005, I turned 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college. I was at Hooters watching Raw. And I wish I was making it up, but I was pledging a fraternity at the time. And we did pledge meetings at Hooters on Monday night because what the fuck else do you do when you're pledging a fraternity and you're in college? And so that night, so exactly. So that night during Raw, it was there. It just happened to be on. And I remember seeing it like the same thing everybody else had, like kind of that oh fuck moment. Being the elder statesman, as it were, I am old enough to remember watching live the night Owen died. I was like, I'm the tail end of the NWA days. So like wrestling tragedies, as bad as it were, is something that I've experienced a few times. But Eddie, you're absolutely right, Nate. Echoing what you said, this was the first time where it seemed like the wrestling world stopped. And that was very different than what had happened because the Von Erichs wrecked Texas, Mid-South, Memphis, Jim Crockett, WWF, they all kept rolling. This was the first time a wrestler died and wrestling stopped. The world of wrestling stopped spinning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even when Owen, the tragedy that happened with Owen Hart, they still aired that pay-per-view, beginning to end.
And I think that's why Martha holds a lot of like resentment towards the company.
And I get that. I 100% understand that. That's a discussion for another time. But I mean, we can all pretty much just collectively agree that this was the time that wrestling did stop, and we had never experienced that before. So it was a shock. It was like treading open water. We had no idea what to expect, and and unfortunately we ended up having to experience the same thing a year later. again, another discussion for another time.
And then you also experienced it about 4 years prior with 9/11. So
right. Well, yeah, that was something there too. That episode of SmackDown that aired after 9/11 was the first public gathering in the United States after 9/11.
Mm-hmm. And Lily Garcia's best national anthem rendition ever.
Chills.
Oh, yeah. That is saying something because she was not a good singer.
What? No, anyways, that's a whole other subject.
Don't disrespect Garcia like that. No.
That was my mommy back in the day.
Whoa.
Well, with that, well, yeah.
So
take us out here, Nate.
So as we begin to sign off, I'm gonna have, if you're in the comments on TikTok, Twitch, wherever you're watching right now, put in the comments who you want to see, who you want us to talk about. We'll take it into consideration, and we'll go from there.
Let's prefix this by saying, and I'm going to say it, we're not doing Chris Benoit.
The Undertaker.
Dang it.
I thought we were Randy Orton.
My reason behind not doing Chris Benoit is too many of y'all can't separate the man from the wrestler, and I don't want to get into a whole bunch of political debates.
Bingo.
That, again, I feel like that is something that should be another discussion for another time. As of right now, I'm with you on that. Not in the cards. It's something that I would be open to in the future. But the discussion would have to be had before we do anything where we
just turn the comments off.
Yeah. Where we got to take it. No, I wouldn't want to do that.
You'd have to, because too many people would just be like, oh, screw Chris Benoit. So
since nobody's typing in the chat, let me ask.
Anyways, leave
Trey,
in the comments who you guys want to see us dive into next. I'm going to shoot for 2 weeks from tonight, 9:00. So as we go around the horn here, everyone's going to tell us a little bit where we can find them. We'll go right around the horn. We'll start with Jamie.
Alrighty. Well, you can find me on Off the Top Media, Jamie Rose X, anywhere that you guys want to find me. I'm not a very findable person otherwise, but Mondays, Fridays here on this channel. Find me at your mother's house. And with that being said, thank you. Thank you.
Cam, where can we find you?
You can find me on TikTok at Cam's Wrestling Corner and on my other TikTok page at Call Me Cam G. Other places you can find me and the Glorious Beard on Instagram, 317 Bacon, Eggs, and Cam.
He got the eggs out for it.
That's great.
Yeah. Hey, Haley, where can we find you?
Haley Counteraround on socials, where you can see I post Eddie stuff.
Trey, where
and
can we
Dominic
find
stuff.
you? Sorry, Trey, where can we find you? Apparently at the bottom of the lake too.
Yeah, so just so you know, if you want me to break chairs, there you go.
I think everybody needs a hearing aid to hear that. Will, let us know where we can find you, good sir.
Gentlemen, thank you as always for allowing me to invade your domain. I am the Will Gray, host and lead writer of Botchbots and Chair Shots. You can find my link tree at the Will Gray for all my shenanigans outside the world of wrestling and otherwise with my writer profile and all my podcasts.
If you guys haven't, make sure you check him out. He is a great podcaster, great entertainer, and he loves to put on this stuff.
I'm his number one fan.
I love you, Cam.
I'll let Nate be the last one out on this one. So you can find me on TikTok at That Guy Shadow 91, where I post my content, or you can catch me on lives at That Guy Shadow 91.3.0. And if you find me on social medias, don't fucking add me because I don't like you.
Thank you. Fair enough.
And that's it. That's him being nice.
Right. So y'all can find me on TikTok at Nate McNamara WB. You can also find me on my group page at the Wrestle Bros. We just had our first professional wrestling match about 2 weeks ago, something like that. I'm still recovering from it. I still have a little bit of a bruise here. It's been a lot of fun. You can find me on Instagram at McNamara Nate. I have a link tree in my TikTok bio too. Again, don't add me on Facebook unless I like you, because I don't like most of you. I'm kidding. I love most of you.
Feeling special, pal.
Before we sign off, too, I do want to say thank you to everybody who has stuck around for this very long discussion that I did not anticipate going this long, but we've been keeping it real. Thank you for keeping it real with us. Thank you so much for indulging us and just letting us talk about the things we love. Jamie, as always, thank you for producing. You did a great job tonight. I don't care what Scal says. Cam, thanks for the unexpected drop in. We love you here. Haley and Trey, thank you guys both so much. You guys are first-time guests, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
Has Trey been on Off the Top before?
Nope, not that I remember.
No, so thank you very much for joining us. Haley, I know you don't really go on camera very much, but thank you so much for joining us for this. I know it meant a lot to you that we did this. You were definitely in our thoughts when we were doing this also. Will, thank you also for joining. I know this is your first time with the Career Retrospective with us today. Hopefully we get to collaborate with you more in the future because it's been a lot of fun. Shadow, my brother, as always, thank you so much. Everybody else, I see your comments. I see Brock Lesnar. I see Sting and Foley. I see Undertaker. I'll take all of those into consideration, and we'll come back with one of those four.
Randy Orton.
Who?
Randy Orton for Sammy.
Randy Orton for Sammy.
Yeah.
We haven't done Randy Orton. But, yeah, I'll take that one into consideration also. We'll discuss. We'll give you an announcement. But we're shooting 2 weeks from tonight, 9 o'clock. Be there. As always, you guys are always invited, all of you who are in here. Thank you so much for talking with us about Eddie Guerrero. I know it got kind of real. We were anticipating that, and we kind of loved that, actually, because, at the end of the day, these people that we're discussing, they're real people. They're people. They have, they've had lives. They have families, spouses and kids and shadows back.
Yeah, my computer died. Sorry, guys.
I'm doing my job.
But again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time. Jamie, when's your next show?
Next show is, technically tomorrow, but with the Roast of Prince.
Ah, yes. Join us for the Roast of Prince tomorrow, 10 o'clock, as soon as SmackDown goes off the air. We are doing another fundraiser for Holly. Holly's going through a second round of treatments.
Just to throw it out there, if anybody wants to donate $55, or in Nate's, what he's planning to do is donate $110, I will shave my mustache as a certain person in time. I will not say on here.
I saw it.
But for 24 hours, or if you're in Nate's case, for 2 whole days.
I'm considering. I don't know if I can commit that much to it, but awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. We hope to see you guys tomorrow for the Roast of Prince. Thank you so much for coming out, everybody. Have a great night.
R.I.P. Eddie.